We're joined now by the last right-handed defenseman drafted by the Vancouver Canucks to actually play an NHL game with the Vancouver Canucks. Frank Corrado, the Canucks take 3 right-handed defensemen amongst their 7 picks, including their first rounder and their first 2 picks. Willander, Brzustewicaz, Celebrini, they're coming for your title, buddy.
It's over, boys. It was a good run. I'll be honest with you. It was way too long of a run. I'm happy it's come to an end. But there's some good players there that are going to be drafted by the Canucks and playing for the Canucks, and I'm happy for them. And there's going to be plenty of opportunity for those players just based on the types of players they are and what the needs of the Canucks organization is.
You told us you've seen Tom Willander play. Tell us what you saw.
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, if you're playing in Rögle in Sweden, chances are you're a pretty good player. That is, as far as the Swedish programs go, that's like very high demand for a number of reasons. Like they've done a nice job there. So there's 2 North Americans running the show there. It's the Abbott brothers. And they've basically built that program up to the point where they are, on the men's side, the SHL team, competitive every single year, looking to win a championship. They're competitive in the Champions Hockey League. And so what that means is they're getting a lot of the high-end junior players and trying to feed them up through the system. So Tom Willander is one of those players. Watching him play this year, I just think like that pick. So I got to see Willander. I got to see Sandin Pellikka because he was playing for Skellefteå. The Willander pick, there's not a box that guy doesn't really check as a defenseman. You know what I mean? Like he's very well-rounded. He skates very well. It's all the same stuff. Skates well, moves the puck well, good poise. But I guess maybe doesn't have the upside that Sandin Pellikka would have offensively. But with that being said, I'm not going to say it's a safe pick to take Willander, but it's just a very well-rounded player. And I think the thing that a lot of people like about him is the competitive edge that he plays for. Like you're not trying to drag that out of him. So you know that when push comes to shove and he comes over to here to North America and wherever he starts, if he starts in the American Hockey League or, you give him an opportunity at training camp, you're not going to be watching him play being like, where's the pulse on this guy? Like, where's the compete? Like, is that going to be a worry for us down the road? Like, I don't sense that's going to be any kind of issue for this guy. And so I think it's, it's a well-rounded player that the Canucks lack on the back end. And I think it could be a great fit. And it kind of fits with the theme of what they went for, even with their second pick. Like that's another player with Brzustewicaz that, I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but like just not a master of anything, but a jack of all trades kind of guy. And so they're, you can sense a theme, like they're definitely trying to build some stability on the back end from within.
You're right. Not necessarily masters of a skill, but they seem more than capable skaters, both of these guys. Again, we're not talking Quinn Hughes edge work or Cale Makar speed or anything like that, but they do seem like pretty good skaters, Frank.
Well, and this is how I would put it to you. So I'm sure you watched the draft last night and you saw some of the clips of Willander, spinning off guys behind the net, getting up in the play. I thought there was a really good clip of some of the blue line work that he does. And I think it's great that he shows that at they call it in Sweden, the J20, but it's the under 20 level. So the equivalent of CHL hockey. Like, I think that's great that he does that there. And he should continue that when he moves up and plays against the men more often. But when it comes down to the skating, like really one of the big areas is like how quick can you close your gap in the neutral zone and take a nice angle and use your stick and force someone into a corner and then kind of get your body through their arms and kill the play, right? So like that's the defensive kind of footwork that a lot of teams are looking for. And I think both guys do a really good job of that. So I would be very encouraged. Like I'd be very encouraged by the fact that the team addressed the need. Like, I know sometimes that gets you in trouble. Like, if you're picking in the top 5 and you're like, I'm going to go for a need instead of best player available, I think you're playing with fire. But I think where the Canucks were picking at 11, to step up and take a defenseman that you think can help you rather than taking a winger just because you think there's a lot of upside there, I think it was a good pick. And their second pick of the draft is another defenseman who plays a steady kind of game, does everything pretty well, skates really well. Like they've addressed needs, and we seem to talk about it when all the good teams go out deep into the finals. Oh, they develop those players from within. They develop those top 4 defensemen from within. Very difficult to go out and acquire those guys. So you give yourself an opportunity to do that here with a couple right-handed defensemen.
Remember the Islanders drafting an entire class of defensemen a few years?
1 year.
So you're not going to be haunted by Zach Benson, it doesn't sound like, huh?
I'm not going to – listen, I think Zach Benson is an incredible talent. I think he's going to do great things. I was watching him get picked by Buffalo last night, and I'm thinking, man, we are going to see that guy dish into Alex Tuch and Tage Thompson, and it's going to be on a lot of highlight reels, and it's going to look really cool. I don't think they're going to be haunted by it. As long as Willander turns into a top 4 defenseman, as long as Brzustewicaz turns into a guy who can play a fairly long NHL career and give you capable minutes. So if Benson turns into a star, which, hey, he very well could, and Willander turns into a star, it's all good. It's just you don't want Benson to be a kid like Mitch Marner putting up 95 points, and you're like, man, we have there's a defenseman that played for Vancouver a few years back, young Finnish kid. I don't want to drag him into the mud, but we have another situation like that on our hands. Like, that's what you want to avoid.
What do you make of Willander going to Boston University? A rare path for a young Swedish player.
It is, and it's becoming more and more popular for a lot of the Swedes. I think, well, first of all, they speak English very well, so that opens the door for them to do that. The first player that I remember doing that was Victor Stahlberg, where he was a Swedish player, and he went to the University of Vermont. There was another player. He plays up in Luleå, and he's been the captain there for a long time. It's Eric Gustafsson, I believe. Different Eric Gustafsson, the one that played for the Leafs. He played for Philadelphia. He went over, he did the college route. So it has been something that the Swedes have been doing a little more. I just think it's a nice way to get you into the North American game without having to play in the CHL. Like I would say, like, college hockey, it's different than CHL hockey. There's less games, but you are playing against older guys. It's really physical. It's chippy. It's competitive. I'm not going to say it's not as watered down. Like, that's not fair to the CHL, but it is just different. It preps you for professional hockey in a different kind of way.
The fourth line's better at college than it is in the CHL.
Exactly. And the fourth line, and that's a great point. And the fourth line is probably a little more reminiscent of what a professional hockey fourth line is going to be like. I think sometimes on CHL teams, your fourth line is going to be stocked with your 16-year-old who's not quite strong enough, and kid that plays 8 minutes a night that just got called up from junior A or junior B, right, on a lot of these teams. So it's a nice route. And I know from my year in Sweden, there was a little more demand starting to build for some of these players. If they didn't want to play in the SHL for any longer, it was like, yeah, let's try and get over and go to the NCAA. It's a great way to prepare.
And Frank, what we love about it is kid admitted he's got to get stronger. You're going to spend a lot of time in the weight room playing NCAA hockey. Kid admitted he's got to get more offensive opportunity, and he's probably getting more of it at Boston U than in the Swedish league, right, with all the men.
Yes.
And then thirdly, and you can speak to this because I know every time scouts go out to look at European defensemen, they have to be able to project how the kid is going to handle a vicious forecheck on the small NHL ice.
Vicious.
And he's going to get an opportunity to learn what that is, just not against AHL and NHL guys who are looking to put him into row C of the stands.
I think it's hilarious. So, like, my first couple of years in professional hockey, I don't know why we get caught up in this, but anything we do, it's like the junior guys versus the college guys, right? And even if it's something like as silly as playing beer pong on a Saturday night after sweeping the weekend, because that's when we would be doing that, not if we lost any games. But, it's like, then you get into it, and it's like, well, in college, we actually forecheck, and it's like that always comes up. It's like alarm bells are going off, and these guys are trying to run you through the end wall with cages on, and it's like, yeah, I can't argue that. Like, it's not like that in the CHL. It's more like guys want to grab their cookies so their agent is happy and their parents are happy and everyone leaves the rink feeling pretty good. So it is a good point. in that regard. But I think part of it, like going in the NCAA route, they work out a lot in Sweden. They really do. It's part of their whole regiment. They don't play back-to-back games. It's like a 50-something game season. It was 52 when I was there. It might have gone up to 56 now, but it's in that ballpark. But the way they train in college hockey, like that's how you make real gains as an athlete. Like they really put a lot into their sports science departments and making sure players are lifting enough during the season. And you see a lot of guys like make significant gains from year 1 to year 3 or 4, however long you want to stay at school. So I think that's a big component of it as well. And the one other point you made was very true. Like you want to play for Rögle in the Swedish Hockey League, you better be ready to take a job from a 28, 30-year-old import from North America who is going to play on the power play and is going to give the team a chance to win a championship. And you at, 18, 19 years old, you're not there yet. You're not ready to do that. So what are you going to play limited minutes on the men's team? Or are you going to go back to play under 20 where it's not the best competition for you because you've probably passed that point in your development? So I think it is a great opportunity for him to get those offensive minutes, which is something I'm sure he wants to improve on because he's not known as a super offensive guy. We've talked about it. He's a well-rounded guy, but you want to take the next step to the NHL. There's one thing I know. You want to get to the next step. Like you have to put up points in the minors. Like you just do, whether you're going to be an offensive guy or not. Like look at defensemen that make the jump. It's like there was a really, really good AHL season. And then that was followed by NHL time. And then hopefully you stick around. Like it's kind of a non-negotiable. What
do you make of Aiden Celebrini's selection in the 6th round? That name obviously has got some pedigree to it. Dad played pro soccer. Brother's going to be number 1 overall maybe next year. But I love the fact that he's going with his brother and Willander to Boston University. I mean, he should be absolutely motivated beyond belief to keep up with the Joneses there. Keep up with his brother, keep up with Willander, who's in the same organization. I mean, the Canucks, hey, they might have fallen into that to some degree, the fact that he's going, or maybe they thought it all through and say, this kid is going to have everything to play for over the next couple of seasons. To me, it's a pretty cagey selection, despite his stats being just fine so far up to junior A.
I would agree with that. And I would say that when you are picking these players, you are trying to make projections, right? Like you want to know that, okay, there's been some development and we've seen some growth. Like what does that look like in 2, 3, 4 years? And when a player is going the collegiate route, it does buy you a little more time because if you're, a CHL player, basically you have 2 years to sign a deal. If you're a collegiate player, you're going to have 4 years to sign that deal. Like it's very significant for those players to get an extra 2 years. And the fact that he is going to have 2 potential future teammates with him, I think helps things. And it also helps like the player development staff for Vancouver. Like I know when I was going through the process, Dave Babich would come up to Sudbury and he'd just be working with me. And he would say, if there's anyone kind of on your team that wants to get out on the ice and make some passes, take some shots, all that kind of stuff, feel free to invite them out. Well, now, like you have a player development staff member who can go out there and work with all 3 guys, right? Like, I think that's significant to just hammer home, hey, this is what we're doing back home with Pettersson, and we're doing it with Hughes, and we're doing it with all these guys. And it's like, now you're getting exposed to that, and we're going to make monthly visits, and we're all going to work on this stuff together. Like, it's nice to have 3 players like that playing on the same team. And even just internally within the guys, right? Like you see, one guy have a great night or have a great weekend, that pushes you a little bit more to push your best to try and match that. I know everyone's built a little differently, but I think it would be cool. And I'm just assuming that did I just assume that Macklin Celebrini would be a Canuck? I didn't mean.
Well,
to
he's
do
undrafted
that.
Next year. He's undrafted, so he can come out and skate with them.
I heard, maybe he'll say like I'm going to the KHL. I won't report unless the Canucks pull the old London Knights.
Hey,
I'm only going if the Knights pick me. Yeah,
they're a season-ending Quinn Hughes injury away from potentially getting Macklin Celebrini. Okay, buddy. TSN free agent frenzy on Saturday, which I know you're going to be a part of. And a Saturday Canada Day. Gosh, this league, man.
Way to ruin a long weekend. Thanks, guys.
Yes, exactly. I know you've been looking into it a little bit. Canucks have been linked to Carson Soucy. Tell us a little bit about the player, and then maybe help us out on what you think you're projecting he might get in free agency, term and money there.
I like him as a player. I don't think the numbers are going to overwhelm you when you look at, you always look at comparables, right? And that really comes down to points per game, games played, if you want to, try for goals, assists, all that kind of stuff. So those aren't going to blow you away. But I will say this, like top 4 defensemen are made up of a couple different things. Like you need your puck mover for sure. You also need guys in the top 4 that can play against heavy players, good players, guys who are good in tight spaces, like that kind of stuff. So having a guy like Carson Soucy, I would like to have that kind of player just based on the fact that I know I can trust him. I know I can put him out against anyone. He's not a liability with the puck. And there's a little bit of offense there as far as what it looks like. So we've been kind of trying to crunch numbers here. And one of the things we're going to do this Saturday that I think is really cool is we're going to have our top 50 list, and then we're going to have projected AAVs for all our top 50. And so basically what we've done is we've used AFP analytics. We're using Evolving Hockey, and then, basically getting into Cap Friendly and trying to see, okay, what's the comparable on these numbers based on contracts that were signed last year, the year before, all that kind of stuff. So for Carson Soucy, I think the projected number was around 2.5 from the analytics side of things. Based on that and the comparables, I was thinking it's going to be just under 3 million, but I absolutely would not be surprised if it's into the mid 3s just based on, and that number, my projected number might change as of tonight because I'm going to, rethink it. But basically, I think that kind of player is in demand right now. I think we saw at the draft how much teams value size, length, reach. We saw it in the first round with Minnesota's pick. That's a big boy they picked early on. And Carson Soucy, he kind of checks a lot of those boxes. He's big, he's strong, he can move pretty well. He's not a liability with the puck. I think there's going to be a lot of teams that are in the market for that kind of defenseman, and that could drive up the price.
10 goals is probably an outlier, though, right? He's going to brag about wingspan. We've done this enough times.
Go ahead.
10 goals probably an outlier for him, though, huh? Do you think you can do that again?
I think he's a very good player. I don't think 10 goals becomes a regular occurrence, but, is 7 goals? You would
got
sign
6
off
this
on
year.
that.
You got 6 this year, yeah.
Sign off on that any day of the week.
I thought he had 3 this year.
I thought he had 6 after 10 last year, yeah.
Okay.
We'll look into it.
Okay.
I'm not a math guy.
Or maybe that's a projection.
More of a heart and soul guy.
But I loved, you saw how teams valued size and length, reach, as you put it.
Yeah.
You do me a favor, Frankie.
Feel free to mute him.
When you see Button on Saturday,
okay,
drop a wingspan on him.
Oh my gosh!
All right. How do you want me to approach this? Just ask him his wingspan.
Here's the background. 8 years ago or so, we're having Craig on the show. We're talking about draft prospects. I say to him, Craig, I see they're measuring wingspan in the NFL and NBA a lot. And, bringing that into the draft evaluations, and we were coming off a Stanley Cup final where you just couldn't get around Zdeno Chara, right, because of how big he is. Yeah. What do you think of wingspan as a draft trait to put some weight into? And him and Price laughed me out of the studio, Frank Corrado.
Oh. I don't think Craig did. I think Craig agreed with you. I laughed you out of the studio, but that's a regular occurrence. And here's the worst part of this whole conversation, Frank. He was right about wingspan becoming a thing. He was also right. 3 goals for Carson Soucy. So I'm done here.
Stand your ground, Matt. Stand your ground,
Thank you, Frank
buddy.
Corrado. There's a reason you're a weekly guest on this show. You're absolutely.
I'm going to bow out now.
Thank you, Blake. Yes, class dismissed, Blake. Frankie, thanks for this. Enjoy your Canada Day weekend, free agent frenzy, and we'll catch up next week, my man.
Guys, bye.
This clip brought to you by Campbell & Pound. During uncertain real estate times like this, get the expert opinion on what your house is worth. Find them at campbell-pound.com.